Okay. I'll just give a little summary of what we did last week since Dr. Yamina wasn't able to join us. So we basically went over what we have read up till this point, including the third fundamental point, and we shared some reflections on different verses in the Quran, especially the ones that Dr. Yamina had mentioned, and then we added some to that list so that we could kind of keep focusing on the role of angels and how God employs them as an answer to our prayers. So it was sort of like a reflective session, and we didn't read the fourth fundamental point, so that kind of actually worked out nicely because now that Dr. Yamina is here, we can keep reading, inshallah, and delve into the text again. As a reminder, we're reading the 29th word. This is on angels, spirit, and the immortality of spirit and resurrection. And we are at the fourth fundamental point of the first aim. So I know Sarah had to step away for a second, but if anyone has any opening remarks or anything that they came away with from last week and would like to just briefly share that with us before I start reading, you're more than welcome to right now. And if not, I'll start reading, inshallah. Okay. Then we can get started. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Fourth fundamental point. If the creatures of the universe are observed with care, it may be seen that, like particulars, universals have collective identities, each of which appears as a universal function. It is apparent that each performs a universal duty. For example, just as a flower, as itself, displays an embroidery full of art, and with the tongue of its being recites the Creator's names, so the garden of the globe resembles a flower and performs an extremely orderly, universal duty of glorification. And just as a fruit issues a proclamation expressing its glorification of God within an order and regularity, so does a mighty tree in its entirety. Have a most well-ordered natural duty and worship. And just as a tree glorifies God through the words of its fruits, flowers, and leaves, so do the vast oceans of the heavens glorify the all-glorious Creator and praise the sublime Maker through their suns, moons, and stars, which are like words, and so on. Although external beings are outwardly inanimate and unconscious, they all perform extremely vital, living, and conscious duties and glorification. Of a certainty, therefore, just as angels are their representatives, expressing their glorification in the world of the inner dimensions of things, so are they the counterparts, dwellings, and mosques of those angels in the external and manifest world. I really like this last part. I think it's like a good place to stop and reflect, going and like thinking back to what we have discussed so far. So I'll read it again. Although external beings are outwardly inanimate and unconscious, they all perform extremely vital, living, and conscious duties and glorification. Of a certainty, therefore, just as angels are their representatives, expressing their glorification in the world of the inner dimensions of things, so are they the counterparts, dwellings, and mosques of those angels in the external and manifest world. Now, by the way, guys, if you have any questions or would like to delve deeper into any one place, you can unmute at any time or write it in the chat so that I'll see and read it if that's what you've done. Inshallah. As is explained in the fourth branch of the 24th word, the first of the four categories of workers employed by the all-glorious maker of the palace of this world is that of the angels and spirit beings. Since, without knowing it, plants and inanimate beings perform extremely important, though wageless duties at the command of one who does know, also without knowing it, animals serve extensive universal aims in return for an insignificant wage, and since, observedly, in return for two wages, one immediate and the other postponed, human beings, knowing the all-glorious Maker's aims, are employed through their conforming to them, their taking a share of everything for themselves, and their supervising the other servants. It will certainly be the first category, as well as the fourth, which will constitute the servants and workers. Okay. I'll finish the paragraph and maybe we could come back to this because it's a bit hard for me to kind of understand or pick it apart. They both resemble human beings in that, knowing the universal aims of the all-glorious Maker, they conform to them through worship, and they're contrary to them. For being beyond sensual pleasure and some partial wage, they consider sufficient the pleasure, perfection, delight, and bliss they experience through the all-glorious Maker's attention, command, favor, consideration, and name, through their perception of him, connection with him, and proximity to him. They labor with the purest sincerity, their duties of worship varying according to their different kinds and according to the varieties of the creatures in the universe. Could you elaborate here, Dr. Yamina, or like how we should understand the categorizations that Imam Nursi has written here, or should we keep reading?
Assalamu alaikum. That's
I-
another topic, actually. He talks about four categories of worker or ibad in the 24th word in the fourth branch.
Okay, so this last part is his what relates to us in the study of angels, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so if you guys want to do some additional reading, you can read the 24th word, but we will continue for now. Like in a government, there are various officials in the various offices, so the duties of worship and glorification vary in the spheres of the realm of dominicality. For example, through the power, strength, reckoning, and command of God Almighty, the Archangel Michael is like a general overseer of God's creatures sown in the field of the face of the earth. If one may say so, he is the head of all the angels that resemble farmers. And through the permission, command, power, and wisdom of the all-glorious Creator, the incorporeal shepherds of all the animals have a head, a supreme angel appointed to the task. Thus, since it is necessary for there to be an angel appointed over each of these external creatures in order to represent in the world of the inner dimensions of things the duties of worship and service of glorification which it performs, and to present them knowingly to the divine court, the way the angels are described in the narrations of the bringer of sure news, peace be upon him, is certainly most appropriate and rational. For example, he declared, there are some angels which have either 40 or 40,000 heads. In all the heads are 40,000 mouths, and with the 40,000 tongues in each of these mouths, they glorify God in 40,000 ways. This hadith has a reality and both contains a meaning and has a form or manner of description. Its meaning is as follows. The angels' worship is both extremely orderly and perfect, and most universal and comprehensive. As for the form of the truth, it is this. There are certain mighty corporeal beings that perform their duties of worship with 40,000 heads in 40,000 ways. For example, the heavens glorify God with the suns and the stars, while the earth, which is a single being, performs its duty of worship, its dominical glorification with 100,000 heads and with the hundreds of thousands of tongues in each mouth. Thus, the angel appointed to the globe of the earth has to be seen in this way in order to display this meaning in the world of the inner dimension of things. I myself even saw a medium-sized almond tree, which had close on 40 large branches like heads. When I looked at one branch, I saw it had nearly 40 smaller branches like tongues. Then I looked at one tongue of one of those small branches. 40 flowers had opened on it. I studied the flowers, considering the wisdom in them, and saw in each close on 40 exquisite and well-ordained stamens, colors, and arts, each of which proclaimed one of the all-glorious Maker's names and their constantly varying manifestations. Is it at all possible that the all-wise and beauteous one, who is the all-glorious Maker of the almond tree, would impose this many duties on an inanimate tree and not mount on it an appointed angel appropriate to it, to be like its spirit, to understand and express its meaning, proclaim it to the universe, and present it to the divine court? This last part, to me, was really beautiful. So this last two paragraphs kind of give us an interpretation of this hadith, of a description of an angel with 40,000 heads and 40,000 eyes and mouths, and each of them glorifying God. So when we think about that in kind of humanistic terms, it just looks kind of beastly or weird. But when we think about it this way, where up till this point in the last 8 weeks, we've talked about both in the halakha and in the reflection group that, we're looking at the trees around us, the flowers around us, the world around us, and trying to reflect and stay in each moment and do some tafakkur, do some contemplation. And in those moments, we're trying to see what meaning is this conveying to me, or what feelings am I feeling? Why am I feeling those things? What kind of relationship do I have with the things around me? And since when we started, it was kind of the beginning of fall, a lot of our reflections were about the trees changing color, every leaf being a different hue, every leaf being moved with deliberation and intention. And I think this hadith, the way Imam Nursi is making us understand it, is really beautiful and gives a different sort of perspective, where each branch and each leaf or flower on that branch, and then within that flower, each says stamens, colors, arts, right? Each of those things that when we look closely, we can see different manifestations of God's names. They're all the angelic side of creation. They're all represented in that manner, which makes it so that we can understand this hadith about 40 heads, 40 tongues, 40,000 eyes, etc. So here in the end of the paragraph, he says, is it at all possible that the all-wise and beauteous one, who is the all-glorious maker of the almond tree, would impose this many duties on an inanimate tree and not mount on it an appointed angel, appropriate to it, to be like its spirit, to understand and express its meaning, proclaim it to the universe, and present it to the divine court? So this is kind of like sort of a bullet point, or like a list, right, of how we can understand the angelic presence, or at least that's kind of like how I'm seeing it. Dr. Yamina, would you like to give us any more depth into this, or how we can kind of internalize this and each of these different I want to say duties of the angelic side of creation?
Assalamu alaikum again. So back to the text. Actually, in this fourth point, at the very beginning, he's emphasizing the relationship and the connection between the particular and universal. If we take the example of a tree, for instance, a tree can be considered as a universal if we are focusing on the branches and the fruits and leaves. So they are, each one is a particular, and they form one collective tree, which becomes a universal. So when we talk about particular universal, it's always relational. And if we look at the tree in the context of other trees of the same species, or all other trees, or maybe plants, or then that tree becomes the particular, and the others, and the whole thing is the universal. And he's here emphasizing and attracting our attention to this connectedness, this interconnectivity between what appears as particular and what appears as universal, and how they are organically connected. This is important because unless we Or let me say it in another way. To the extent that we start experiencing first understanding intellectually, and then experiencing through living in the world, through the heart, through the soul, the ruh, because in this text soul is used for nafs, for the ego. We will start feeling and experiencing the interconnectivity of the world. And then becoming more and more connected to the melekut, to the angelic aspect of everything. If the test for ourselves is, if I look at the world and I see myself as separate, and maybe the first step is not this one, this is the second. The first step, I see things as separate from each other. And that's because I see myself as separate from the world and everything else, as a separate entity. Then it means I am not acquainted yet with the melekut, the angels, and the angelic aspect of things. Because it's only to the extent that we become familiar with the angels that we can experience the interconnectivity of everything, and vice versa. To the extent that we contemplate the interconnectivity, to that extent we will feel that there must be something else. So when he here the author Imam Nursi rahimahullah is referring to the hadith, he is not explaining or making a tafsir of the hadith for the sake of tafsir. He's bringing the hadith as for us to make his point, so that we understand, to clarify what's going on. The hadith gives us a clarification of this point. So the first thing is, the first point here is something we talked about it in the other point, but here he's saying it more clearly. He's saying the external beings, al-mawjudat al-kharijiyya. It means, because he's speaking to us, remember in maybe the first point, he was talking about unconscious beings. And he's speaking to us who are so alien to the concept of angels, that he has to start convincing us step by step, convincing us, or trying to explain to us that such a thing has to exist. This is what, it's an introduction. So it means, if I need this explanation, it means I am experiencing the world as though the things around me are unconscious. That's how I see them. So now he's saying, although external beings are outwardly inanimate and unconscious, the tree seems like a solid matter, doesn't, I mean, it's moving and it's there is life, but still, how much do we connect with a tree as something that has more than that? Or we gave the example of a mountain, that the Prophet ﷺ, for instance, gives the example of the Uhud, that Uhud loves us and we love it. And for us, it doesn't make sense, because that's just even worse than a tree. So that's why he's using words like external, outward. He's saying it looks like that to you. So that thing that looks unconscious, there must be something there that is performing. They are performing extremely vital, living, and conscious duties and glorification. And the more we go and study, the more it is amazing all the functions that they have in the environment, within themselves. Many of them have lots of medicinal uses, and without talking about those, just being there, they are fulfilling so many functions of wisdom. It means of benefiting the life around them. So those duties that they perform are extremely vital. There is a life there, living, conscious duties. And glorification, he's not explaining this here because he's explained it somewhere else. If we have not learned how to see that those functions glorify God, then we need to learn that. Otherwise, we won't be able to see the Malakut side of everything. It means at this level, just let's say, if someone is not familiar with glorification, which we talked a lot about, there is meaning. It is not haphazard. It's something that we relate to, that we can study, that we can contemplate, that we can understand. If we understand it, it means something meaningful. There are messages to be read, to be understood there. And that's the beginning of understanding the glorification, because once we understand the meaning, we realize that it doesn't pertain to the tree itself only, but the way it is being made, the way it is being brought into existence. Actually, the words used in the original are all chosen carefully. For instance, at the beginning of the fourth fundamental point, if the creatures, the original is not makhluqat, but mawjudat, because makhluqat, it means it's a creation, you already accept a creator. He says, no, mawjudat. You look at it, there is something existing, that beings. And the creator here is Fatir. Fatir is usually translated sometimes as originator, to differentiate with Khaliq, which is creator. And Fatir, some explain it as creating from nothing, but it's also creating in a certain fitra. It's not just creating like that. Each thing is created in a certain fitra. Just that in itself is a miracle to contemplate on. How is matter, the same atoms, the same molecules, this, at the end of the day, everything is made of the same matter. How come not only they have different shapes and different colors, but they have different fitra? One is a cat, one is a tree, one is a human being, one is... How something is going on here. Something huge is going on here. So that's why he uses the word Fatir. And all of them are very well ordered, and they are glorifying and fulfilling a duty of ubudiyya. So the worship here is ubudiyya, because the difference is they are not making ibadah as we understand, but their way of being is worship. It's obedience to the divine command. And so they have this, they all perform. So he says, of a certainty, like there is no doubt that matter cannot be expressing these meanings, these vital duties, these living living functions so important. Therefore, of a certainty, just as angels are their representative, expressing their glorifications. So that part that looks to the meaning, that looks to the something is happening to consciously, the conscious part of that looks to the angels. It's difficult to, it's only difficult, or it seems difficult to express it because we are stuck in seeing the tree as matter. It's like, as I had mentioned before, if someone comes from another planet and is they take a human being as a, you know, to test, and they find that this is matter, atoms and flesh and bones, and they have nothing else if they are like us and have nothing else to measure the feelings and the consciousness. Can you imagine if they think that's what human being is? We would be like smiling and laughing, like they missed the whole thing. That's not what human being is. It's not the outward, as he's saying here, the outward being. Our outward being is only a tiny part of who we are. Our consciousness, our imagination, our reasoning are huge compared with our physical body. And we do that to the rest of the universe because we consciously are not in touch with our true self. I mean, our true self is there, but we are not consciously who we are, or very little. And so that's why he keeps saying outward, external being. So the angels, just like we have a ruh, they have the angels. So that represents and express their glorification in the world of the inner dimension of things, the dimension of things that looks to meaning, to the divine command, to the alam al-ghaib, that is in touch with alam al-ghaib, that receives the divine command of kun fayakun, be and it is. So they are the counterpart, the dwellings? It means these beings, they are the dwellings, just like our body is the dwelling of the ruh, they are the dwellings. And the mosques because they are all in a state of total surrender, total obedience to the divine command. Mosque, so they are in prostration, so to speak, symbolically at least, metaphorically, of those angels in the external and manifest world. And then he talks about the different categories, because he's saying one of the categories is the human being. So he wants to tell us how they resemble us and how they are different. So he says, without knowing it, plants and inanimate beings perform extremely important, though wageless, duties at the command of one who does know. Also, without knowing it, animals serve extensive universal aims in return for an insignificant wage. So they are performing very vital duties, but they are not getting really a wage accordingly, because they are not aware of the extent of those duties in space and time. So they are like, they look only to what they are being assigned to do. Do we realize how important the duties they are performing are? That's important for us to carry on, because that's to do with the interconnectivity of everything. And for instance, ecological, if we talk about ecological balance, it seems like maybe an insect or an animal is not very important. For us, maybe it's even not needed. It may be even not beneficial at all. But in fact, you can see that it is part of that order and that balance. And what comes to my mind is, remember we talked when we were talking about interconnectivity, when we were reading the 33rd word, we talked about the wolves. So there is a national park, I think it was Yellowstone, and the park was, the river was drying out and the trees and the vegetation was disappearing, especially the trees around the river. That's why the river even changed its route and everything. And they had introduced a bunch of wolves. And then everyone was very surprised. But what happened? They were not expecting that, because usually we think wolves will kill and eat some animals. But because the wolves came, the deers, I think it was the deer, that was grazing on everything and destroying the vegetation, had to change its behavior, had to hide. They didn't go everywhere. And so now there is a limitation, and as if a tarbiyah of the deer can't go everywhere. And because it didn't go where it didn't go, life started. As vegetation grew, had the time to grow and develop, then all kinds of birds and animals and all kinds of flora and fauna developed. And then even the river changed its route. So like the introduction of one being changed the behavior and therefore the life and the environment of everything. And that park apparently became flourished after that. Subhanallah, you would never think that they are related so orderly and with harmony, with equilibrium, and such a sensitive balance that no wolves means almost the disappearance of life in that park. Subhanallah. So they have lots of duties that they're employed in ways that they are not aware. They don't know. And since observedly, in return, but as human beings, he says we have two wages. One immediate. You eat, you are hungry, you eat, you feel good. And if the food is a food you like, you feel really grateful, you appreciate it. And the other, postponed. The other one looks to the Razaq, the provider, being grateful to him. It looks to the ruh, not only the emotions at a animal being, but more to the ruh, to what we are created for. And of course, the real postponed one is we understand that this is only this transient world is only the, how do you say, the introduction. And we look forward to akhirah, we look forward to paradise. and the other postponed human beings, knowing the all-glorious Maker's aims, are employed through their conforming to them. And of course, we don't know all the aims, but we are made aware, or we can be aware somehow of some aims. At least, for instance, God is making himself known through his creation. He's making his, for instance. And when it comes to conforming, we are also different, because now we have the choice to conform or not, at least to the second. One aspect of us already conforms like everything else, and even that aspect we can disturb it. They're taking share of everything for themselves, and they're supervising the other servants. It will certainly be the first category as well as the fourth, which will constitute the servants and workers. They both resemble human beings. So the other servants, there is a hierarchy of beings. It doesn't mean they are not necessarily separate. They could be also one within the other. Like all these categories exist within us, because a part of us is like an animal being, but we have on the top of that a human consciousness. So they both resemble human beings in the fact that, knowing the universal aims of the glorious Maker, they conform to them through worship. And of course, we don't always conform, but they do. And they are contrary. In another sense, they are contrary to us, to human beings, in that they are beyond sensual pleasure and some partial wage. Sometimes the partial wage that is given to us is only to motivate us so that we understand the higher meaning. But if we don't understand the higher meaning, we can totally get lost in the partial wage, in the sensual pleasure, and we start living life as if there is no akhirah. Even when we are not denying akhirah, we may not have yaqeen of akhirah here and now. We're not acting in the name of God. We don't know what it means. And so even if we are when we do something good, we think, I'm doing something good, and inshallah, hopefully, God will give me the reward in the hereafter. So it's all organically not connected in our being, in our experience, in our perception. And it is a hope, it is not a certainty, because we didn't do the witnessing, we didn't see and live that we are not the one doing. The one who is helping, who is doing, is the one who will help us and do unto us as well. So if we miss that, it becomes easy, even as believers. It means we are not denying, because we're not talking about non-believers, to get stuck in the sensual pleasure, and we live life for life. And we have a little slice of our life that is for akhirah, like a little investment, but the most of it is as if it has nothing to do with that. But they are not like that. So beyond and partial wage, they consider sufficient the pleasure, perfection, delight, and bliss they experience through the all-glorious Maker's attention. If they do it, it means we can do it as well. Remember, we are higher. We are created with a fitrah that is higher than them. When the Prophet ﷺ in Mi'raj, he went beyond the angel. So we are supposed to do this as well, They are different because they don't consider sensual pleasure at all. That's how they are created. But we have to do it by choice. Minimize the worldly and increase the non-worldly, the part that looks to God and therefore to Akhirah. So that's what they do. The pleasure, perfection, the delight and bliss they experience through the all glorious Maker's attention, his command, his favor, his consideration, and his name through their perception of him, the connection with him, and proximity to him. All this is for them, that's their bliss. And actually we are created also, that's the bliss of the Ruh. The Ruh is, that's why we need a connection with the angels. Because remember, how do we learn to glorify? How do we make shahada? Because the realm of creation is alam al-shahada. Through observing them, we understand how they are witnessing to their creator, how they are glorifying their creator, and that's how we are called to participate. If you see a beautiful sunrise, it moves our heart. So it is, and if I understand and I know how to read it as glorifying God's beauty, then already in the fitrah there is a connection and an urge to participate. Now I participate not only, oh, wow, what a beautiful sunrise. I will be subhanallah, mashallah, tabarakallah, or whatever. Tabarakallahu ahsan al-khaliqeen, or any names of God you can see there, because now we are in connection with the angelic part of the sunrise. There is a meaning that's coming and speaking directly to the ruh, to the heart, to the ruh. So all this will become also our experience, inshallah. They labor with the purest sincerity. Their duties of worship varying according to the different kinds and according to the variety of creatures in the universe. So here he comes to, he's saying just like each, let's say each leaf, each fruit has its angel, the whole tree also has an angel. So he's saying it is necessary for there to be an angel appointed over each of these external creatures. External, he's adding it for us, because it's not like there is no external and internal in reality. It's one هو الظاهر وهو الباطن. It's one creation. In order to represent in the world of the inner dimensions of things the duties of worship and service of glorification which it performs, and to present them knowingly to the divine courts. And then he talks about the hadith, and so how is everything the smallest and the biggest. I mean, look at ourselves. If you remember when we studied the 33rd word, the 31st window was the window of, insan, of human being. And there he, let's not go there, but he was talking about how human beings reflects the beautiful names of God in different ways. For instance, through our weakness, we reflect God's power, etc., through the contrast of... and also, the second was through, for instance, I see and understand that whoever is creating must be creating seeingly. And then I understand that his seeing and my seeing are not of the same nature. So my seeing is only a unit of measurement. And it's not like a drop of an ocean. Its nature is totally different. It's acquired, and it's not essential to me. And it's limited even, like I can't see the whole spectrum, for instance. And the third one was the more difficult to understand, because it's not something we understand intellectually. It's something that we need to contemplate. And it's about the ruh. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but for instance, I want to move my hand and it moves. It seems to me, if I never pause and reflect, that I am moving my hand, but actually it is only a will. It's like an emr. And then it moves. Of course, the part that it moves is related to malaika, to the angels, and to the divine will. But here I'm looking at the other aspect, that all the organs, all the limbs, all the cells in the body, they are all different, and each one has a separate function, but those functions are all interconnected in order to benefit this one single human being, so that that human being lives a let's say, inshallah, a healthy life. It's the same in the world. They are all, everything seems to be separate and independent, but actually they are all interdependent, interconnected. Each one has functions, but those functions are all at some level contributing to common goals and benefits. And at the same time, just like the eye sees separately and fingernails grows separately and things, yet they all have one entity, which is that human being. And we can move this and that, and they are all related through that identity, through that ruh that keeps them together, at least at one stage. Of course, it's bi'idhnillah. So it's not like it's like a comparison, how everything has different angels, but all of them together have also an angel that is like the almond tree. There is the almond tree angel, but in charge of all the angels of the tree. But there is also maybe an angel of the earth that is overseeing all the other angels of each tree and everything else. I don't know if it makes sense.
I took a lot of notes because it was very enlightening for me. And we have some comments in the chat also. So before I close out, we're coming to the last section of the first aim. Ziba, you had some comments. Do you want to read them or summarize them, that as Dr. Yamina talked, you had you brought them up.
I'm driving. Can you please read them?
Yes, sure. So one of the things was Subhanallah and Astaghfirullah. Even we attribute so much to our physical being and have so much biases based on that. And interacting with so-called inanimate world is another level of opening and interaction for us. And then later you gave us an example. In 1958 in China, they had shortage of grain, so they killed all the birds thinking they're eating all the grains. Subhanallah, it led to infestation by large numbers of insects as the birds were keeping them in control. So the insects destroyed the remaining crops. What a beautiful Rob. So this goes to the interconnectivity of things and actually, I guess, also what we see and what we don't see. So it was similar to Dr. Yamina's Yellowstone and wolf example. And so much of the order is based on our assumptions too. Like we have assumptions that doing something will lead to another thing, but we're not really that tuned into the interconnectivity of things to see how actually things interact with each other once we introduce something new or take something away. We are nearing 9 p.m., so I will read this last bit, and then inshallah, if we have any closing statements or any questions for Dr. Yamina's comments up to this point, please post in the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you. Bismillah. Oh friend, so far our explanation has been an introduction to bring the heart to acceptance, the reason to submission, and to compel the soul to surrender. If you have understood it to some degree and wish to meet with the angels, prepare yourself. Moreover, purify yourself of the wrongful prejudice. Now look, the doors of the world of the Quran are open. Look, the paradise of the Quran is with wide open gates. Enter and look. See the angels in beautiful form in the paradise of the Quran. Each of its revealed verses is a place to alight, so look from them. And then here we have a bunch of verses. So Bismillah, this one is from Surah, the 77th Surah. By the winds sent forth one after another to man's profit, which then blow violently in tempestuous gusts, and scatter things far and wide, then separate one from another, then spread abroad a message. By the angels who tear out the souls of the wicked with violence, by those who gently draw out the souls of the blessed, and by those who gently glide along on errands of mercy, then press forward as if in a race, then arrange to do commands of their Lord. Therein come down the angels and the Spirit by God's permission in every errand. I like that. I know that Imam Nursi chooses his words very carefully. So in the original text too, I think he repeats this thing, look, look, see. And even though we've talked a lot about how the Melekut side of things is the inner dimension, world of the inner dimension of things, I think what he's saying is that if we look correctly, we will actually see it. Like the witnessing will happen. It won't be something that we take for granted or just assume that it's there. So just wanted to also point that out. Inshallah, Dr. Yamina, if you have any closing comments, Oh, I'm sorry, guys. There were a few more verses. Let me read those and then we can get closing comments, inshallah. Okay. This is from the 66th surah, over which are appointed angels, stern and severe, who flinch not from executing the commands they receive from God, but do precisely what they're commanded. Also listen to, glory be to him, they are but servants raised to honor. They speak not before he speaks, and they act in all things by his command. Listen to its praises, and if you wish to meet with the jinn, enter this resounding surah. Say, it has been revealed to me that a company of jinn listen to the Quran. See them and listen to what they say. Take a lesson from them. Look, they're saying, we have really heard a wonderful recital. It gives guidance to the right, and we have believed therein. We shall not join in worship any gods with our Lord. Okay. Now, if anyone has any last comments or questions, or Dr. Yamina, if you'd like to give us any homework before we start the second aim or something that we should contemplate in the next week, please go ahead.
Maybe read the fourth fundamental word again, and if possible, contemplate and reflect on few ayat, few verses, one or two, or however much you want from the verses mentioned at the end, inshallah. Keeping in mind that this is a pillar of Iman. It's not like, okay, so if we get to understand this, it's okay, otherwise it's not important. It's extremely important if, or to the extent that our Iman in Malaika. Iman is not just I don't deny their existence. Iman, it means I believe, I know what they are. Otherwise, if I don't even know what they are, how believing in the existence is good. It means I don't deny them. That's the first step. And then I have to get to know them. To the extent that we know them, we get our Iman in God will increase, and there will be less room for shirk. If there is no Iman for Malaika, the room for shirk grows. So it's important. Otherwise, Allah won't tell us that it's a rukn, it's a pillar of Iman. So let's make an effort. Pick something, read it once or twice during the week, and in the rest of the time, pick a paragraph or an ayah or something and reflect on it. The more we repeat something in our mind, the more things start coming, because reflection is not I understand, it means there was 2 here and 3 here and 4 here. Now I understand why it is 2 plus 3, 5 plus 4 is 9. It's not like that. This is receiving new knowledge, new guidance, new light, being enlightened. It means I am praying and asking for help, for guidance, in order guide me to and help me to understand this, to feel it, to perceive it. And the more we are in that state, the more things will come in ways that are beyond our imaginations. Inshallah. It's a prayer.
I like that. I said that even when we are reading and reflecting, we have to pray for guidance. We can say, God, please make this reflection fruitful for me and enlighten me, I guess, with your nur. Sarah, I saw that you unmuted briefly. If you have anything to say before I close out, go ahead. If not, I will do the prayer.
Jazakallah khair, Noor and Dr. Yamina. Just a major pause for me, and this I have nothing to say other than pausing with the heaviness of everything that was said, specifically the likening of the singular and the universal from the beginning of the text, connected to the end of this fourth point, which was the one angel with 40 heads, each head 40,000 mouths, each mouth 40,000 tongues, and inviting the human to really, I don't want to say metaphorically, but to really pause with the spiritual reality of receiving that much news. La ilaha illallah. That is like a lot of news. And so we are being bombarded right now with other news. And with each one story, we are bombarded with 40,000 feelings. Each feeling has 40,000 needs. And it becomes like this quote unquote overwhelming, or maybe some people feel, you know, people are really struggling right now. Understandably. And now if we can take the guidance from Imam Nursi, rahimahullah, rahmatan wasi'ah, and really pause, we're given an opportunity to translate that news flooding our being with every image or every video or every, you know, new reel, with a speech that's landing on me. You know, there's feelings landed on me, and those feelings are each from some presence that comes unto me. And if I think that it's me, then I've disconnected myself from the entire world, especially those that I'm witness, that I'm, you know, that we're watching, as opposed to like, so what I am starting to feel as true is when I pause and realize that this flooding, yani the 40,000 of the 40,000 of the, it was a perfect for me a hadith, a perfect way of describing the innumerable, yani truly things that we feel and need and wish and want and long for and especially during such a time where all of our human faculties are really being stretched. You know, it's like we're finding so many feelings of love and compassion and the need for justice, and each one is so strong and it projects onto every single person that we see. And yeah, there's something really miraculous if we can really invite the truth of this speech. There's something really miraculous that connects me to the quote unquote reel that I watch. Maybe it's a 15-second reel, but in that 15 seconds, I've felt thousands of, things. And and such a strong presence and such a strong connection that how can we ever think that either us are alone or they are alone? I just can say, subhanAllah, there's truly a miraculous presence that must be with every single soul, you know, every single injury, every single, yeah, thousands really. And Dr. Amina, feel free to share, but I just, to connect this to what we're experiencing, I think that the deeper the trial and the deeper the vulnerability, the deeper the need to witness these miracles of power, these miraculous carriers of his command. So if I suddenly feel a need for compassion or ease, and it suddenly like just bangs on my door in such a strong way, and if I think that's me, then I think, oh, it's not fair that they don't have that, or, you know, then I can get angry, because then the real injustice is like they deserve, but they're not getting, as opposed to perhaps, and I'm asking Dr. Amina, this is not me knowing, I have just to share what's coming. But if there's a feeling that needs that, then there must be, and this is thousands, Yani. This is not just like one little angel of peace, please go give them peace. This is thousands of presence that the Quran, Yani, the Quran promises thousands of angels to sweep down and help the believers. And if each one has 40 heads, and each head has 40,000 mouths, and each mouth has 40,000 tongues, then who am I to project, you know, and I don't know what the word is to fill in, but to project a lack of miraculous power and assistance taking place that I cannot see. And I'll pause there.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe instead of feeling the peace and then getting angry, the feeling the grief and the helplessness and the need for them, they must be helped, the compassion, that itself, where did it come from? You watch something and you are filled with all this. If we are used to living in a state of witnessing, it means it's not from me, that it's coming onto me. Witnessing is, I witness the reality. I perceive the reality as it is, and I do not steal it and appropriate it to myself. And we do the stealing when we are unconscious. For instance, I see someone in need, and then I say, oh, I am feeling like this, and if I can help, I go and help, and I credit it to myself. But in reality is, if I'm used to living in a state of ihsan, in the presence of the one who is giving me, breathing life into me now, who is breathing, my breath is not under my control. And so I witness and experience the feeling coming onto me and pushing me to do something. And sometimes we can only pray and we cannot reach. So we feel helpless because I am believing a delusion that I am the one who has to act. And now if I can't, of course, if it's something within my capability, then I am responsible. But if not, then Alhamdulillah that whoever is making me feel that way is. Actually, it's a moment of witnessing how merciful, how he is the helpful, he is the generous, and that it will increase our iman instead of questioning God's rahmah. It increases our iman and it increases our dua, prayer, in a positive way, not praying, but what if I'm praying, but what if it doesn't reach them? Because I don't know God, I can't trust him. He is even allowing all this. But if I'm sure and certain, and I'm living right now, that he is the one who is making me feel compassion and feel all this, we can't even name them, those emotions about someone I don't even know. It must be only him who is making me feel this. Then I witness that لا رحمن ولا رحيم إلا هو ولا قدير إلا هو ولا معين إلا هو. And the more I witness and I make the shahada, there is no helper and no compassionate except him. Now my dua, when I say, oh, you who are the all compassionate, I know now that you have compassion over everyone. Otherwise, you wouldn't even make me feel this. So now we are more, more enthusiastic in our praying for them, in our sending the angels of the Quran. You know that we read every meaning, every scent, everything has angels. And the words of the Quran, the meaning is universal. The words of God, they have lots of angels. So for instance, last time we shared Fatiha plus 100 Surah Al-Ikhlas every day. Send them plenty of angels to help and heal and support and inshallah.
Yeah, more enthusiastic and more safe, more
yeah, because if all of us, can you imagine, it means we are not strong enough to even from far. How can you imagine? We can't even help with dua. What kind of situation would that be? Because we are too helpless to even pray.
I think that's how it was feeling in the beginning prior to really diving into this study. It's like, here we are praying and asking for something and I don't see change. Therefore, it's like that whole faulty deductive reasoning. Okay, therefore my prayer wasn't answered. Therefore the help isn't reaching. Therefore, and it was very easy to start to feel doubt or anger or just an unbalanced state of being until, alhamdulillah, Dr. Yamina sent plenty of grounding reminders and then the text that we're studying. And I really, really appreciate now the specific wording of Imam Nursi when everything that we have read thus far is the reasoning, the rationality, the empirical reasoning to come to the conclusion rationally that it must be. How else can you explain it? It must be. That means my feelings necessitate the existence that there must be angels already with them, since something is telling me to send them in prayer. As though my prayer is going to send them there. No, my awareness of them.
My prayer is our prayer is for ourselves. Allah is already taking care of them. Our prayer is for ourselves, and it's in our arrogance, and it's an arrogance not that we know everything, but we don't realize that we don't know anything. How do we know? Because we're seeing only a small slice of reality right now. It's all flowing, it's fani, it's transient. And we come with a hukm, with a judgment about it being good, bad, or this or that. And however the other side looks strong or that, according to what? Anything that is fani cannot be strong. La qadira illa hu. There can't be anyone powerful except God. We know that there can be an earthquake and all of us will disappear, the weak and the strong. So powerful over, according to what? According to our very limited, apparent criteria. So istighfar and back to something is happening and it is an imtihan for all of us, but it's not, or it is within God's control and his power and his rahmah and his hikmah. Just because I don't know doesn't mean that it's not there. So it's, if we have practiced taslim, surrender, acceptance of whatever Allah creates in our life, it becomes easier. Otherwise, this is a good start. Start with, yes, whatever you create is always the best. And if I'm feeling I dislike this, it means you made me dislike it. What's the wisdom? Well, to pray for better. If you can do something, do. If you can't, at least pray in your heart, in your words. And so it's all for us in a sense, because God's plan is happening anyways, whether I am feeling helpless or feeling hopeful and trusting him unconditionally, inshallah.
I will just end with the advice that I was given that's really helping me take the reality and take the kitab, right? Take the guidance from Imam Nursi and the guidance from the Quran, has been to really be aware of these spirit beings and angels. And one specific example that comes to me, Dr. Yamina, was I remember feeling so horrified and a million feelings about not having food and not having water and how is this possible. And I saw one video that really just disturbed my whole being for a good amount of time before I was able to really sit with it, of somebody being forced to drink from somewhere that was it just was very heartbreaking to watch. So then, subhanAllah, I was remembering what we're studying, and I started listening to the feeling saying, pure water, like they need pure water. Okay, so we can just turn it into a dua. This is what I'm being asked to do right now. So I just paused, and with every prayer, I focused on this great need. And the next video that I saw was like this. So I'm thinking like, oh, but what if the trucks don't come in, and how many bottles of water does 2 billion people? And I don't know. I just say, you are a kafi. You can suffice them, and you can send them pure water that is pure. From where? I don't know. How? I don't know. Let me not even think about the way. And next thing you know, I see all these videos of like a flood and the skies were ripped open and water was pouring from everywhere. And it just showed me that in a single moment, if we wouldn't have to see that video, we would be in despair, like, oh no, but what if? But there's these tiny little reels that give us a tiny little glimpse of the thousands and thousands and thousands of angels that we don't see. that are assisting, helping with immense power and immense compassion in ways that we can never even imagine. So when we see one tiny reel of 10 seconds, you know, let us really lean into the depth of the infinite capacity of the one who sends the feelings, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Thank you both. So, I will stop here. It is almost 9:30 and a lot of people already dropped. So, I will reach out to Dr. Isra to see, or maybe Sarah, you can do this to upload the video to the channel because I couldn't, I was on a different computer today and I couldn't live stream. I will stop the recording right now.